there's a real risk out there. That beautiful event that you had, you may never be able to watch it again. The top line thesis or the thing to keep in mind is, how do you prevent a calamity from happening?
When I get married, what ends up is like the filmmaker quit the business and I lost the video completely and now I cannot recover it.
One, the drive can get lost. Two, it can get damaged or broken. The other part is that those things aren't going to be, they may close up their business and they will not take any calls, emails, text messages from prior clients because they basically wash their hands and they never want to deal with couples again.
Hello everyone. So welcome to today's podcast. Today we are going to discuss a very critical issue that couples often overlook is securing their wedding films. Oftentimes when couples get married or having contract with their filmmakers, the challenges or the things they often overlook is how the film is being delivered, how they will get the video. Will it be delivered through USB, DVD, or it will be a cloud solution, or what? People or couples are not aware about that, and after the wedding, when the film is being delivered, they have to face a lot of challenges. Oftentimes the USB get lost, they lose the Google Drive link, maybe the filmmaker is out of the business, so the cloud subscription ends up and they are not having access any of their videos. And most of the time 80% of the filmmakers do not care about the client experience after they are getting paid. So how the film's being delivered is no longer their concern. But it is most concerning thing for the couples because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for them to get the videos recorded and have the events on their own. And today I'm joining with Michael to really discuss about these issues that couple often overlook at the time of wedding. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm welcoming Michael to today's session. Michael, welcome to today's video.
Thanks, Mom. Great to be here.
Okay, great. So Michael, let's dive into it. As we all know that oftentimes couples are really not concerned about how their film's being delivered, and filmmakers are just delivering it the way they really want, the cheapest and the worst possible ways they have on themselves. So what do you think? Why couple are doing such mistakes, and what's your recommendation for them, for those who are planning to get married very soon?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, yeah, I mean, this issue is it's near and dear to our heart. We've been working on this issue. Our co-founder John Geddes and myself for many years. We've been involved in the industry for a long time, and so yeah, we've seen different approaches and good and bad, and also I would say kind of some maybe sad events in the fact that maybe some of you watching this can identify that maybe your wedding film has been deleted or it got lost and you couldn't recover it, and that was it. And there's no going back. You can't recreate the event. So kind of at a high level, that's really one of the biggest considerations is, how is that beautiful film or the films, how are they going to persist over time? How are you going to be able to watch these in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now? These are the types of things that we're thinking about. If we kind of go back to, let's say before you had digital options, if you had things literally on film, on, maybe fast forward a little bit, but things on VHS, beta, DVD, Blu-ray, and things like that. These were sometimes mediums that you had to be very, very careful of and really be a good custodian of or steward over time. And so kind of at a big picture, we're just trying to help people become aware of, hey, there's a real risk out there that beautiful event that you had, you may never be able to watch it again. And ultimately that's what we want to avoid. So I'm sure we'll go into more of the details, but just kind of at a high level, that's the first part we're thinking about it. And the good thing is there are many solutions, some better than others, but ways to actually preserve this. But I think really the top line thesis or the thing to keep in mind is, how do you prevent a calamity from happening? And how do you be proactive with this instead of finding out a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, hey, you know what? It would be great to watch our wedding film on our 10-year anniversary, on our 20-year anniversary. Hey, my kids, my grandkids, family, relatives, they want to watch it. Hey, there's some people who are no longer with us that we want to watch some of the videos and hear them talking. And you want to avoid going to try to find where's the link, where's that USB, where is the file, and then either it's nowhere to be found physically, or the medium failed So even if you have the physical device, it just no longer plays. Or you don't have a file, you had it downloaded locally, no longer available, or your computer cropped out. Or, a random link that was an email that you don't have the email account anymore, or it was on Google Drive, and you no longer have access. So we'll dive into more of the details, but that's at a high level. That's really what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I can share you one experience of myself. Like when I get married, like I didn't really have time to really deal with the wedding filmmaker, so my sister did that. And what ends up is like the filmmaker quit the business, and the Google Drive link is not working anymore, and I lost the video completely, and now I cannot recover it. So I know there are a lot of couples who also have maybe the similar issues. So what's your advice for the couples who newly get wed, their films being delivered with either Google Drive, YouTube, or WeTransfer, or USBs, and how they can really secure their videos now so they don't need to have the similar experience like me? What's your advice for them?
Yeah. Well, first, yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, Enzo. I know that's always a big loss, and it's one of these events that, unfortunately can't be created. And hopefully we can turn your situation into, advice and improvements for other people. But I know, yeah, that's a hard thing to deal with. And I know maybe some people watching this video have had a similar experience where, they planned this amazing life event and brought together family and friends that will never, ever, ever come together again. Like, this is one of these few events that you can get these people together. You cannot recreate this event ever. And so to answer your question, yeah, some of the things they can do. I think the first part is changing the mindset. So whether you want to call it updating your belief system, whether you want to call it changing your perspective or your mindset, I think there has to be a conscious, deliberate decision around these videos, or maybe only one video, but the project, if you will. And I think one way to think about it is, obviously people spend varying amounts on weddings, but in the US and probably North America, somewhere in Canada, you can look at the statistics, but call it somewhere around, I don't know, $25,000, $30,000 for an average wedding, more or less depending on what city. But so I think one way to think about it is, if someone charged you $30,000 to film that video, would you take the due care of it and being a custodian of it or steward of it much differently? Probably. If I handed you $30,000 in cash or gold or silver, would you, not you specifically, but the audience, would they think about it differently? Like if I gave you 30,000 and said, hey, I'm going to entrust you with this for the next 50 years, you would think about it much differently, right? You'd be like, okay, well, how do I keep this safe? How do I prevent it from getting stolen? How do I back it up? Do I put it in a safe deposit box? I need to go check on it periodically to make sure it's still there. So I think that's the first part, is just updating the belief system and the way that you're thinking about this. Because like you mentioned earlier, this is one of these things that you can't recreate. And I know some people in the industry, I love the way they refer to it as like a family heirloom. And I would agree. I think it's something super important that can be passed down and shared with generations and family and friends for years and years to come. And ultimately, there's no reason why the video ever has to get deleted. Not in this day and age. So a few things specifically, we'll go into more and more of the details, but I think at a very high level is that first part is change your mindset. Because if you don't update your belief system, I can tell you, we can go over every specific way to back it up and have custodian. But if your system is like, oh, I'll worry about it later, I have 150 things on my plate, it's not that important, then there's a high probability that terrible results are going to ensue in the future. So I think the first part is being very deliberate and conscious about this film. And again, treat it as it, for the investment that you made. If you spent $30,000, if you spent $10,000, if you spent $5,000, if you spent $100,000, that's what you should treat it. Treat that film as a $100,000 film. And I promise you, you'll take a much different approach. The second part I would add to that is taking ownership of, kind of going back to the first part, but taking ownership of the longevity of that file. So I think there's a piece of it of not outsourcing, completely outsourcing that responsibility. So again, kind of going back to this mindset where it's someone else's responsibility. Oh, my filmmaker, they have it under control. If anything goes wrong, I can just pick up the phone or send them a text or an SMS or send them an email, and it'll immediately be available. I stored it on my computer. I downloaded it to my local machine or my MacBook or my PC, and it should be there forever. And we know from our own personal experiences and working with literally tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of couples, that approach more often than not doesn't work. So I think just to kind of recap is 1, update your mindset, your belief system, and then 2, take personal ownership of the custodian of these videos for the rest of your life. Don't try to outsource it. The responsibility. I'm not saying don't outsource some of the redundancy and the backup, but don't outsource the responsibility. I think that part's, and maybe it's controversial. Maybe people agree with it. Maybe they don't. But where we've seen the best success with couples is for sure those 2 things. And then we'll go over the implementation, because there's many ways to be successful with actual implementation. But if you don't have those first 2 steps, your probability of success is going to be way lower.
I see. And I think there's a controversy as well, like whose responsibility is it? Like, is it the filmmaker's responsibility to keep the video up lifetime, or it is like the couple's responsibility to take care of their own videos, right? So I think you almost answered in the previous sections, but if you just clarify these, like, what do you think? Is it a 50-50, or it's more on the couple side than on the filmmaker side, or it's more on the filmmaker side than on the couple side? And the other thing is, like, what if they just do a backup on their USB or hard drive versus they go for the cheapest solution like WeTransfer or this kind of cheap solution and just go and host it? So what's the disadvantage there you see versus hosting them on Mediazilla?
Yeah, these are great questions. So maybe we can break them down. So the first part of your question was, who is responsible for it? So I would say maybe we kind of break it apart into the actual delivery process, if you will. So I would say there's an initial delivery of the film, and maybe even call it within the first maybe 30 days, maybe the first 3 months, some reasonable transition period. Let's call it the transition period. In that transition period, I would say the responsibility, the onus is on the filmmaker, because ultimately they have the initial possession, they're doing the edits, maybe there's some back and forth, and then they're responsible for actually transitioning that file or transitioning the ownership, if you will, to the end user. In this case, couples, people getting married, things like that. So I would say in that instance, this transition period, let's call it from maybe the initial delivery up until maybe 2 or 3 months. I would say that part is very much in the hands of the filmmaker, because unless the couples, which they can, again, we'll get into that, but unless the couples are explicitly stating, this is how I want my film delivered, this is where I want it delivered, ultimately that decision process, the delivery mechanism, is in the hands of the filmmaker. So I would say that part, that transition period. But then there's I think there should be a very, very clear divide for, let's call it the longer term, maybe mid to longer term storage, access, things like that. And again, I want to be very clear. It's not that you can't use third parties and you can't outsource some of the actual execution of it, but more of the top level, who is ultimately responsible, who is the owner for this process, if you will. So long term, that absolutely transfers to the couples. If I'm someone getting married and it's been 3 months since my film was delivered, I need to take responsibility for the longevity of that. And, maybe you guys agree with that, disagree with that. I totally understand, but let's just kind of walk through why is that? Well, first of all, look, people in, whether you know it or not, people in the filmmaking industry, just like any other profession, they're not necessarily going to stay in that business forever. Some people have a really long career and they're in the industry for 10, 20, 30 years. And that's fantastic. And they're easily accessible. And, if you have an issue, you send them an email or text message and they're Johnny on the spot and they will help you out in a heartbeat. And those people are amazing. But there's also people who, and I don't think they're being nefarious or anything like that, but there is turnover in the industry. And unfortunately, there's, I wouldn't call them necessarily bad actors, but there's some people who I've seen just personally who are a bit unethical in the way they operate, meaning that they may close up their business and they will not take any calls, emails, text messages, anything from prior clients. It is basically impossible to get a hold of them, and that's very deliberate because they basically wash their hands and they never want to deal with couples again. And so you have to understand the reality of that. So even though in your head you might be thinking, oh yeah, what's the big deal? I'll just go back and reach out to Johnny, give him a call, send him a text message. Hey, can you resend that link? But we've seen it a lot of times. You're going to find out the hard way. They can't be reached. And the reason I know this is because we see the emails. I've seen these emails. I'm not just pulling up, random things or trying to create fear, but I've seen the emails. I've had phone calls. I've had SMS messages, text message, all these things back and forth with end users saying, can't get in touch with this person, will not take my calls. Their website is offline. They've closed their business and I have no way of getting a hold of them. So you just have to understand that is the reality for obviously not all filmmakers, but that's a known risk factor. And so again, going back to our earlier discussion of you really have to update your belief system and take ownership of this. Because, if you're trying to put it off on someone else, again, this is for the long game, right? Beyond that, call it that 3-month window. There's a high probability that you're going to be really, really disappointed. And I think that would be very, very unfortunate. So yeah, I would say those are kind of a couple key things. To the other part of your question, okay, so you asked about what are the pros and cons of physical media, USB, even we'll call even your local computer and things like that. So again, we'll go into kind of, I think we'll keep talking about all the execution details. So some of this is again kind of high level and then moving down, kind of this top down approach instead of getting in the weeds right away. But one of the risks that people have to consider is that there's also, let's call it, it's very nerdy, but a single point of failure. This is used in a lot of different industries, engineering specifically. If any of you guys know about commercial aviation, that's constantly what they're trying to hedge against. Do we have a single point of failure? Is there one key component or process that if that process fails, it's going to be potentially catastrophic? So how do we have redundancy? And if your film was only delivered on a physical USB, and that is your only copy of that, that is by definition a single point of failure. Because you have no idea if the filmmaker has backed it up, you have no idea if they're accessible years down the road, and you have one physical drive. And let's just walk through what could happen. There's more things, but one, the drive can get lost. As crazy as it sounds, like, a small little, I don't have one right here, but like, here's a set of keys. Like it's a pretty small thing, and that could easily get misplaced. People move. Like just think over the long term, 20, 30 years, you might move. That thing can get lost. 2, it can get damaged or broken. Those things they're pretty resilient, but you could drop them. Something could fall on them. They can get smashed. So, it's not like these things are indestructible. So that's one consideration. The other part is that, those things aren't going to be playable, accessible forever. It doesn't matter if it's, most expensive USB drive or other type of hard drive or backup or something like that. They all have a finite life. And, you can go online. There's people who, there's anecdotal stories. Oh my God, I got 30 years. I was able to access this USB drive 30 years. And there's other people that might say, no, this thing crapped out after 6 months or a year or something like that. So yes, there is a range. So if someone hands you a brand new USB drive, it's probably not going to die tomorrow. But I think it would be unreasonable to say that that single version, that's going to be your only copy, and 10, 20, 30 years from now, you're not going to have any issues. And you could make the same argument if you only have the file or files stored locally on a computer. Again, if this is your only, assuming this is not backed up on Google Drive or Dropbox or Mediazilla or another service or something like that, same concept, single point of failure. I'm sure many of you can attest that at some point your computer might have died on you. If you're Windows, you might have had the blue screen of death. You might be familiar with that. That's brutal. MacBooks, if they die, it's kind of it's game over. Just recently, my girlfriend's iPhone died, and we went to the Apple store and they hooked it up, ran some tests on it, and the motherboard died on it. And we might be able to get some content. Unfortunately, most of the stuff is backed up on iCloud, but you don't know when these things are going to fail. There's no warning on there. Sometimes they may just fail, and maybe you can recover some stuff on the solid state drive, and maybe you can't. So, I think those are a couple of key issues. Just if we talk about the, one physical device, whether it's, a USB, and for some of you folks out there too, maybe even you got your films delivered on DVD or Blu-ray or something like that. So all the same concept, single point of failure, high risk, long term, and you should expect disappointment long term if that's your only copy.
Yes, and also on the other side, if we look into that, like oftentimes when couple go to a filmmaker, they just have verbal commitments most of the time. Some of them are concerned and serious, and they have something on paper, but in the terms and condition page, there are like 20, 30 different terms that couples really don't have time to really read out everything and then sign, and they just sign and just leave the place. Just like they order a cake and all these, like we're buying a wedding ring, because at that time they have a lot of work. So what kind of clause they should really concern about when they are signing? And if we look into the filmmaker side, like what kind of add-on they can add into the packages to make sure that yes, the film is being delivered for lifetime, or the film is being stored for a reasonable amount of time so the couples can easily access it from anywhere in the world. So can you give me advice for both of the sides? So what couples should be concerned about and how filmmakers can tackle it, and what kind of package or add-ons they can add that can really make the game win-win?
Yeah, these are great questions. So maybe we can tackle it first at a high level. Contractual obligations are great, but the better thing is just to work with reputable, trustworthy people, because you could have the best contract in the world, and if you work with someone who's shady, it doesn't matter. The contract doesn't matter, and you're going to waste. It's very. I think people have to understand contractual obligations, especially on the stuff we're talking about with independent filmmakers and small businesses and stuff like that. The reality of actually trying to enforce that, it may never actually be enforceable, and you're going to try to go to small claims, and you're going to, spend years and years trying to litigate or track these people down and spend maybe, thousands and thousands of dollars. So I think the first part of it is understanding that the contract alone isn't going to save you on both sides. The better part is, one, always act ethically. Two, work with reputable people. Try to do due diligence and find people who are reputable. That's a way better risk mitigation than anything you're going to put in a contract. But having said that, let's talk about from a filmmaker standpoint. So, the first part, it's hard to put in a contract, hey, you're going to have access lifetime. Because, ultimately for filmmakers, look, it puts you at a lot of risk exposure. You're probably not charging for risk exposure for the next 30 years to say that this film I'm going to deliver, I'm going to guarantee that it's going to have lifetime access. So I know most filmmakers are a little bit hesitant about actually putting that in the terms and conditions, and I don't blame them. I don't think it may not be reasonable to say, hey, if I deliver this film until the day you die, it's going to be accessible. That's a lot of risk to assume. And, if you're acting as an insurance agent, well, you need to adjust for that risk. You'd probably have to charge 5 times the contract value to mitigate that risk. However, I think you can be very, very explicit. And again, this is talking about from the filmmaker standpoint. I think you can be very explicit in your contract to just explain how does the process work. Hey, I'm going to deliver you, a digital copy or a physical copy or both. And I will put up a guarantee that I will have that film. You'll be able to access it. So if something happens on your end for, 6 months after delivery, a year after delivery, some reasonable period, I think that you can really back up and stand behind, and is not putting you at a massive amount of risk exposure. I think that's reasonable. And I've seen a lot of filmmakers do that. They say, hey, from the time I deliver it, I will have your film backed up for at least 90 days, 180 days, 1 year or something like that. So anything should go wrong, because you want to give these people peace of mind too. That's the thing, is if you're working with couples, I mean, you have to think, it's not just the money they spend on you to create the film. They might have invested $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000 to have you film their wedding. But they may have invested $30,000 for the wedding. That's the number they're thinking about. They're not thinking about $3,000. They're thinking about $30,000. So I think, having empathy for couples, I think it's not unreasonable to have some type of guarantee in there, that you can hold up on, that you can hold up your end of the bargain. And again, if you want to put it up longer, if you want to put up different options, going back to your question about can you update your packages, you can either update your default packages to have exactly what your process is, but you can also upsell this. We've seen this with a lot of our members. A lot of people using Mediazilla have had a lot of great success upselling this. So maybe their base package is, private delivery or delivery online or digital copy plus physical copy or whatever they think is best for their customers. And then maybe a guarantee of 90 days or something like that. But a lot of them, what they'll do is they can upsell it and say, hey, I'm going to give you the ability to access this for a much longer time period. And you'll also have the ability to download it, to stream it. You can take possession of this. And it's maybe a one-time fee of $100 or $200 or something like that. So instead of you just having to have custody of this thing on your local computer, on an external drive, on Google Drive, Dropbox, we know people clean up their drives periodically, that you can actually sell a longer term solution, to couples. And, you can still put in there, hey, how does the process work? Hey, long term, you're still responsible. So I don't think there's anything wrong with disclaiming that responsibility. And it's better to be explicit than just leave it ambiguous. So even if after the 3 months or 6 months, you can specify that process. So I would say on the filmmaker side, that's a couple solutions. On the couple side, so what might they want to see in the contract? Well, the first part is, how important is it to you? You have to understand if they have let's put ourselves in the shoes of a filmmaker. Most filmmakers have a pretty standard contract. Some have had attorneys review it. Some their contracts from peers. So anything you have to modify, if you have to make modifications, it's going to delay the process. So the first part is understanding, are the terms in there, are they reasonable? Do they even have things that call it out? But if you have to go back and change a contract, sometimes it could be as easy as adding a line, but sometimes that one line, for any attorneys out there, people watching this, that can negate or offset or contradict other parts of the contract. So a lot of times updating a contract isn't just as simple, I'm just going to add in one line, But I would say if there's nothing that talks about it, then yeah, you may say, hey, how does this process work? Can we update the contract? Or depending on how comfortable we're all, get it in writing, have them write an email. Hey, here's how the process works. Today's December 9th. Your wedding is February 15th. I'm going to have your film to you by, let's say, April 10th. And once I deliver it on April 10th, I will maintain full access to all the videos in there for 3 months, at least 3 months. After 3 months, I might still have it, but kind of the contractual obligation is over. And so that it's good to have that in writing. It's good to just be explicit. So there's no ambiguity. Everybody knows exactly how the process works, where the transition is. So if you're a couple, I think that part is super important. Just understand how the process work. And if you're not comfortable, just bring it up. Say, hey, no, 30 days is too short. I need 60 days, or I need 3 months or something like that. And then kind of going back to the earlier part, also this is for couples again, is that mindset shift and taking ownership of the file. So now, okay, I ultimately control the process and I am responsible for making sure that file is accessible forever. So I need to have a process and I need to think about the longevity. Because again, I know people have a million things on their plate and there's a lot of moving parts, and you might be asking yourself, oh man, I have to set reminders and I have to think about being a custodian of this wedding film and this memory and this heirloom. And I understand, yeah, it's a lot to think about and it's only adding to your plate. But I might pose the question rhetorically, is how important is this film to you? And if it's not that important, then yeah, roll the dice. That's fine. But you can't be disappointed if you get terrible results 10 years from now and the file's deleted and it's gone forever and you can never access it. Because there was a point in time where, you had the ability to have a process and think about it. And it could be as simple as something maybe once a year, you update. Again, going back to the gold example. Inzamam, here's $30,000 in gold coins. In 10 years, I want to make sure that you can access those $30,000 in gold coins. taken in that context, you're going to take a way different approach than just, I don't know, I had some link. My filmmaker sent me some link on email. It should be fine. What could happen in the next 10 years? Yeah, let me know how that turns out.
Exactly. And Michael, we are almost at the end of the video, but before we leave, like we are talking about what we should do in the contract and what needs to be done. That would be for the would-be couples who are going to do that. But what if, or what's your advice, like for those who already get married, have their film being delivered, and now they don't know what to do next? Like maybe they have been married for a couple of years, and now by watching this video, they are aware about the situation. Now, what's your advice or solution that they can use or they can follow to really secure their videos?
Yeah, this is a really important topic. So yeah, if we kind of recap the question, if we say, hey, let's say you're a couple and you got married recently, year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, what have you, and what do you do? How do you take ownership, and how do you improve the process, and how do you improve your likelihood of success long term, which I think is a really, really relevant topic for a lot of people. So I'd say the first part is go find that video. I know it sounds like a silly thing to say, but one, do you know where that video is? Can you access it today? That's the first thing, is just track down, where is this thing? Is it on a physical USB drive? Is it a link in an email? Do you even have access to that email anymore? Do you have it on Google Drive? Do you have it on Dropbox? Do you have it on, hopefully not OneDrive, which is crazy, but, where is that file? That's the first thing I would ask, is where is that file? And can you even access it? And then can you play it? So one, if you can find it, fantastic. Two, can you play the video or all the videos? Because I know it sounds like a silly thing, but these files, did they get corrupted? Is the format still accessible? Is the device still accessible? So even if you found the USB drive, can you even play it? Was it on a computer? Do you still have that computer? Is it in a closet somewhere? Is it on Google Drive? Is it on your Google Drive account? Is it on your Dropbox? Or like you talked about in Zom, is it someone else's Google Drive where you had a link to it, but they deleted the file? So I think the first part is just track down exactly where those videos are. And then second step, can you play them? And can you play all of them all the way through? Not just hit the first play, but can you play them? Can you watch them all the way through? Those are super important. If you can't do those, then you need to try to, one, get in touch with the filmmaker. Two, was it backed up in another location that you're not thinking about, but just kind of go through. If you can get access to all those, the first part is, make sure these are backed up. You have some level of redundancy. So if you only have it on a local drive, a single point of failure, get those videos in your Google Drive account, Dropbox account, Box account, OneDrive, iCloud. Just create some type of redundancy. So you have at least 2 locations where these things are stored. Maybe one physical, one digital, or have them multiple digital. If you have Google Drive and Dropbox, put it in both. So at a minimum, just start there where you have this redundancy. Now, if you use a service like Mediazilla or maybe some other service in the industry, obviously we're having this conversation today, so we're still in business. So you shouldn't have any issues accessing it. So if your file was delivered on Mediazilla, great, just log into your account. Shouldn't have any issues. Log into your account. If you don't see it there, or it was delivered there but you can't find it, cool. Open a support ticket. We'll track this stuff down. We take this stuff really seriously, so we'll help track this stuff down and we'll get to the bottom of it. And if it is accessible, fantastic. We have all of our stuff backed up on Amazon Web Services. It's backed up in multiple locations, multiple times. But I would also say still, obviously I'm biased, but still download the videos, and then store them either on your local machine. So you have one in the cloud with us and you have one locally, and or also put it in your own Google Drive, Dropbox, have as many, because again, these files aren't that massive, they can be quite large. I understand that. For most people, you're talking about 5-10 gigs and storage is cheap. So, put these things in multiple locations so you get rid of that single point of failure and you have the redundancy. And then if your files aren't downloadable, reach out to your filmmaker, ask them, hey, can you update the setting? Can you make this thing accessible? Now, if none of your files, again, going back, let's assume your content wasn't delivered on Mediazilla. The other part is you can either, if your filmmaker is still around, you could ask them, hey, can you put this up on Mediazilla with a beautiful presentation? Maybe they're going to charge you a small fee. But I would say having that redundancy and that beautiful presentation accessible, that could be worth it. Or you could open up your own Mediazilla account, as crazy as that sounds. We have the free tier and you could just pay per gig. So you could actually open up your own Mediazilla account. You basically pay a one-time fee to upload your content and have it accessible. We can help with that. You could even do a paid plan for, a month or something like that. Because I think for most couples, paying for Mediazilla long-term, may or may not be the best thing. It's probably better as a one-time fee, but obviously we'd be happy to help for couples if their projects weren't delivered and they trust us and they want reliability and they want a beautiful presentation, they want peace of mind, then we're absolutely the place to go.
Perfect. I think this all advice will definitely help the who are planning to get married, who are newlywed, and who have been married for a few years from now. So, Michael, thank you very much for joining. Hope to see you in any other video. So, for now, bye and see you online.
Thanks so much, Iswan. Appreciate it.